Got it.
Cool bananas. Cool bananas. Okay, moving on then. So paths, let's quickly go through paths. Now, there are two types of paths. There's course dates and document paths. Now, believe me, paths, process steps, and rules, they need their whole extra course, okay? They're probably one of those powerful aspects of course sales, but they're also one of the most tricky aspects because you've got to get your head around the steps that you'll do in the workflow, and when a step happens, what will be the occurrence of applying that step. You have to be pretty sort of hold it in your headspace. So I try and encourage a simple sort of view. We have one path for documents, one path for course dates, and where possible, we look at how we can use those two existing paths. There are some instances where we create more than one path, but often that is to cater for something that can't be dealt with otherwise, or to simplify the management of a particular course or a set of documents or enrollments. So there are two types, there's course dates and documents. We group the process paths. So each is basically a grouping of process paths that is applicable, process steps. So we group the process steps into the path. And I'm going to take you through the path elements in a moment. That is the items that are within a path that you're editing. I'm going to talk about controls. I'm going to talk about time-based automation, prerequisites, and if there's a missing prerequisite. Some of the stuff is getting pretty complicated, so don't be afraid if you're not quite sure what we're talking about. I'm really happy to go through this another time as well. Like I say, it requires quite a little bit of in-depth thinking and consideration. I'm going to talk about forms and their visibility on public pages as well, because this is where we specify what we would like to display on our public pages. And we try and keep things simple. So just start with the defaults and stick with the defaults. And we're here to help, okay? So if you have any problems, feel free to join in, and we'll give you a bit of a tutorial or advice about whether you should or shouldn't make changes to your paths based on a requirement that you have. Okay, so there are course date and document paths. So let's just have a look at what we might expect to see in a course date or a document path. So in a course date path, you'd probably see things about managing trainers, managing venues, maybe food or exam packs, so organizing catering for the room, anything like that, which you might be doing. That's what the sort of thing that might be appropriate for managing a course. Documents are a little bit more complex because they're managing the student, and inevitably the student has a lot more steps. So they're managing enrolments, for example. Sending certificates and statements are managed on the document path. Cancelling a student, getting USI verification, or beyond that, reminding the student if they've got the wrong USI details, or getting their response back as well. Now, some of these might actually be appropriate to be automated. So you're not going to see them in the document path when you are editing the document. So often the paths include a lot more steps than you're aware of. So these are each of the process steps in the document paths you might include. Notification of course changes and transferring. Okay, so these are, we actually have a transfer in and a transfer out step. So there are two different steps within the same document path: transfer in, transfer out. So where do you see this? Well, this is not where we edit it, but this is what will happen when you edit a process path. This is where it appears. We have the course date path appearing when we're editing the course date. So if you've ever gone on and edited a course date, you'll see a workflow box, and within that workflow box, you'll see an ability to click on a lightning bolt, and that lightning bolt will display a set of process steps that you have access to. So in this case, it's invitation to register, which is where an email is sent out to the customer contact. We have a send request to trainer, maybe to ask the trainer, are you available to do this training? And then we have a trainer response, which is the trainer clicking on a link in the email that's sent to them to confirm that they are actually available for that training. Oh, that's okay, Juliet, no worries. You have been listening, excellent. Oh, that's good, 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 no worries at all. And then we've got the document path. So the document path, obviously a little bit more in here, but not everything. So you don't actually see transfer in here. So transfer ins and transfers outs, they don't appear in the process path when you look at it from editing the document, but they are there. if you go and have a look at the path when you edit it under the automation tab, you will actually see all of the transfer in and transfer out steps, even though they're not listed here, because they're considered to be automated steps that aren't appropriate to show under the process step list. But you can see, it gives you a bit of an idea of the sort of steps that you might expect to see in the document path. So that's your workflow. Okay, now these are the path elements. So this is pretty cool. You've got your typical name for the path, and then you've got the type. So that'll be document or course date. Then you've got your process steps. If you click on the little plus sign again, see, it's just the same as when we were creating a format, and it's the same when we create a form. You click on the little plus sign there, and then you get another record you can add. And you can see here we've got the process step. So we select the process step from the lightning bolt. We've got the different forms that you might include. So the document form is the form that you might include when you want to gather an enrollment. And you might have an extranet form, which is the form you might gather when, for example, you're sending out an assessment to a student, or a feedback form. And that's a form that is sent out. A unique link is sent to the student, and the student clicks on that link and then completes this extranet form. Okay, it's called an extranet form. You can also have guidance within the system itself. So within Course Sales, you can have a form that gives guidance, literally has a series of steps of what to do, or it could go even further. You can even gather information there. It's a normal form, so you can gather things like text box forms, radio fields, you name it. You can actually gather quite a bit of information from the operator within the Course Sales administration area and include that in your PDFs. So there's a lot of stuff you can do using a process step form. That's a little bit advanced. So if you want to do that, you're best off talking to us and we can give you some suggestions. And you can actually see this in action when somebody responds to a, I think the USI response. If we choose that it's wrong, we actually type in there what we've told the student. In fact, that might be on the document now. There's a few changes gone around there, but if you're interested in using process step forms, let me know and I'll give you a go. I'll give you some time to show you that. Some additional items just off to the right here that are relevant to forms. We have an option for a capture. That's basically checking, is this person human or not? That's an option there. We also choose whether or not these document forms are visible on public pages. So some of those document forms aren't appropriate for being on public pages, others are. So it kind of depends on how you want to operate. Again, changing document forms is something we might do. For example, when we're getting USI data, we effectively hide all of the other information except for the first name, last name, USI, and date of birth. That's an example of where we change the document form, but we don't want it visible on public pages. So public pages is to display it when we're displaying the course dates. So when they click on the enroll now or register button. We've got the ability now to have the step within the trainer portal. So this is a recent advancement to allow trainers to actually apply process steps. So we can actually get trainers now to apply process steps and carry out particular activities. And you can choose what you want them to do. So whether you want them to take registrations, whether you want them to send statements of attainment, whether you want them to send a notification to a student that they've got their USI wrong. Those are all the things you can do here. So then we've got the other two things, prerequisite process steps and missing prerequisite process steps. Now, again, this is a bit of an advanced feature. Basically, if there's a prerequisite step, an example of that is when we have a, let's have what we say, we want to send a statement of attainment. So to send a statement of attainment, we have to have the USI verified. If we don't have it verified, we're not allowed to send a statement of attainment. That's the SQL requirements. So what we do here is you'll find that if you go and have a look or edit your existing paths, you'll see that on the send statement of attainment or send certificate, it should say USI verified as a prerequisite. So you can't do it unless that's in the what we call the history of the document, of the status of the document. Now, a step further than that, we can actually do something even better, something more exciting, and that is we can even apply a different step if it's missing. So if we don't have the verified USI verified step completed for that document, we can apply another prerequisite process step. So that we can apply a step. So we might apply the step, a reminder of the USI. So when you go and choose send statement of attainment and you click save, if we don't have a statement of if we don't have a USI verified for that document, it'll automatically apply USI reminder, which is pretty cool stuff, because what that means is that we don't have to think again. The operator doesn't have to think again to go, oh, I wonder what's going on. But you do have to keep an eye on it, because what it means is, hey, you've got to come back to this and send a statement of attainment later, once we've got that USI verified. Oh, and now we've got finally time-based automation. So we've got the ability to trigger time. Depending on your license, you'll be able to trigger it on the start date of the course, the end date of the course, or the document submission. And the relative days is when you want to trigger this. So negative is before the course start date or before the course end date. And positives is after the course start date or after the course end date or after the document submission. So that's the way you can use the relative days, before or after that particular time triggered rule. And then you can even have different steps applied if they're registered or if they're just an inquiry. So an inquiry might be, for most people, it's when the USI has not been verified yet. For a document registration status, it's when the USI has been verified. This is a way of distinguishing what sort of communication do you want sent out to your students. Well, it depends whether or not they're an actual student who have really booked on and are getting close and attending, or whether or not they're just an inquiry and therefore they haven't really maybe purchased or committed to the training course yet. Okay, so this is just covering some of the stuff I've already mentioned, so I'll just go through it quite quickly. We've got the document forms, gather enrollment details. Now that is not applicable, of course, to course date paths. We've got extranet forms for assessments. They can also be for gathering additional information like feedback forms or anything you need to gather from your trainers, for example. You know, it can be quite broad, the sort of information you need to get. Think about what you do via paper at the moment. The likelihood is an extranet form could probably suit that purpose. Process steps form inline guidance for the admin. So the process step forms are for the guidance when the operator is operating course sales in the admin area. Include in summary displays on the status page. So that is to be able to, oh, that's something actually I didn't mention. Let's just go back a bit. You can see here, we've got this little summary option up here. Now what that does is that will display this step in the dashboard of the status page. Okay, so that can be pretty cool, because then you can get a bit of a dashboard and see where all the documents are at for a particular course, or where your course dates are at. So that's pretty handy. And yeah, if you want to explore that, if you need a bit more of a dashboard arrangement, let me know and I'll just make sure you're set up correctly for that. Prerequisites ensure a previous step has been applied, and then maybe if it's missing, apply a missing prerequisite step. And then finally, triggering to occur automatically, which is a certain number of days after the start date or the end date or the document submission on the course.